Welcome to our TJ webinar. Now, if you're here live with us, you know that we've had a couple of minor issues and we're starting much later than we normally do. So apologies and thank you so much for bearing with us. We have with us today some fabulous speakers. I will get to them ASAP. You know me. You know this is all about conversation. You know you've got the chat window because you've been using it already. You've got Question Pod if you want to use that. We were going to skip over the speaking part today. You can join us on Twitter, and some of you have been chatting on there already, which is brilliant. You know that you can get all of our previous webinars on our training journal site, so you can just go there for anything that you might need. Let's get our speakers on to the screen. And we've got our webcam, so we just need to start that again and get going. So this is me. Hello, my name's Jo, as you know, and we will get our other webinar speakers getting their webcam started again. So they're just going to click the start button and just make sure that's working. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hello, Jennifer. So Paul Gray 2, have I managed to make the wrong person the presenter? Maybe I need to do it that way around. So there's Paul Gray 2, which maybe that's the James. So we'll come back to James in just a moment. So he's doing marvellously with some technical issues, as are Jennifer and Fiona. And yes, I got the wrong Paul Gray. Thank you very much for that. So let's have a really quick introduction to everybody, and then we'll get started on our conversation. So let's go to Jennifer, then James, then Fiona, and just really quickly, what is it that you do?
Hi, so my name is Jennifer. I'm a learning and development consultant trading under the name of River Park. I mostly work with admin teams, helping them sort of develop their skills, mostly with Microsoft Office, mostly with Excel, and helping them just become a bit more confident using that. I also work with some small business owners and some business advisors as well, so quite a mixed bag. Love the variety that gives me, so yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Fiona, so much. Sorry, Jennifer, so much. And James, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, hi everyone. Nice to be here finally. So you look like a woman on the verge of a nervous breakdown for a second there, but don't worry, we're all here now, don't worry. So I work for a company called Good Practice. Some of you might have heard of us. We provide tools and resources for leaders and managers to help them do their jobs better, and part of our product offering is e-learning. And I look after the team who produce our e-learning content, and I'm also a board member of the e-learning network, so I've got quite a vested interest in e-learning and what people think about it.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Fiona, finally, but by no means least, tell us a little bit about. Oh, Fiona, you're not connected to your audio there, so I don't know whether you're on mute, and you need to just select that button at the top left. You might just need to play with that. And if you're having some problems, we can come back to you in a moment.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So it looks, yes, there you go. Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Fiona.
Yeah, hi, my name is Fiona Quigley. I work for a company called Logic Earth Learning Service. We're based in the island of Ireland. My job is Head of Learning Innovation. Probably something similar to James. My role is to keep an eye on the trends and indeed the fads in the learning industry, and kind of keep our clients abreast of those kind of new developments and provide advice on best practice. I have a background in e-learning content production. That's where I started in this industry in the 2000s, and lots has changed since then. So I'm really interested in this conversation and how people think e-learning is and where it's going to go in the future.
Thank you very much, Fiona. So could you just pop your microphone a little bit closer to your mouth for us so that you can hear you a little bit better? And so keeping an eye on fads, that's definitely why we're all here, and keeping an eye on trends. So we're going to move into our question today, which is all about why is the world still obsessed with e-learning. So some of you will have heard our SoundCloud little podcast that we did with some thoughts on this. So we'd really like some of your questions, some of your thoughts on this. So let's come to Fiona, then James, then Jennifer. I'm going to put you down to just one key point around e-learning to get the conversation going, which is very mean of me. So Fiona, one key point about e-learning at the moment. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my take on the question about why we're still obsessed is that it's not that we're obsessed with e-learning, it's the fact that e-learning hasn't quite reached its potential, and that's why there's a focus on it, and indeed that's why there's a shift in the naming from e-learning to digital learning. So it's about the potential and how we can do it better.
I love that, the potential and what we can do better on that. And James, same question to you, like one key thing about e-learning at the moment.
I'd agree with Fiona there that I tend to talk in terms of digital learning and online learning because people have a very fixed view of what e-learning is in inverted commas, which is that very much that kind of experience of 60 screens and then you click next and then you've got a multiple choice question at the end. So I think, you know, the term e-learning is helpful in some respects because it gives people, it immediately calls to mind a certain format. But actually for me personally, it should be more expansive than that. So it definitely ties in with what Fiona was saying. I think digital and online learning are more helpful terms because, you know, they do encompass far more than just the traditional idea of what an e-learning course looks like.
Thank you so much. And I certainly subscribe to that theory because of, unfortunately, that negative terminology that has been with e-learning. But that's just my opinion. So Jennifer, what's yours? What's your, you know, one key point about e-learning that you can share with us at the moment?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a label. I think it's quite a poor label for what it could you know, potentially be. I think digital learning or online learning would be much better, because I think the connotation is that e-learning is just that next button that is pretty soul destroying, I think. So yeah, I think it's around the terminology and about time we maybe changed it.
Yeah, that's getting some traction in the chat window. Paul Gray says the term e-learning still has a heritage born out of further and higher education. Online lecture noted. And Scott Connor is suggesting technology enhanced learning. And I did have to ask what TEL was, but thank you for sharing that, Scott. And Alessandro says, couldn't agree more that the term e-learning brings along some negative legacy among the audience. So let's come to Jennifer, James, then Fiona to say, well actually then, if we're not looking at legacy, if we're not looking at the negative connotation, what's the positive that we can take from digital online technology enhanced? So what's the positive?
The positive is that through technology we can reach so many people at one time. I mean, you know, even just this webinar that we're doing today wouldn't have been possible, you know, even just a few years ago with rubbish broadband and you know, all the expense of webcams and microphones and everything else. So it's as Fiona said earlier, it's the potential that we can link up people, you know, all over the world and all learn together at one time.
I love that, and I love the focus on.
I think for me, I mean, online digital learning, it gives people options, and you can be as creative and as elaborate with those options as you like. There's obviously some kind of pitfalls to that in the sense that a lot of instructional designers or learning designers, what they end up doing is over engineering a solution because there's lots of potential there, there's lots of possibilities there, when sometimes actually what's needed is just an online checklist or an online template that you can send out to learners. But for me, what's exciting is you can come up with some fairly innovative and creative solutions if that's what's needed. But obviously the main thing is you're always trying to link back to the performance outcomes. What is it you're wanting a learner to be able to do as a result of completing this learning experience? So I think as long as you tie it back to whatever solution you come back to, as long as it supports what the learner must do back in the workplace or back in whatever environment they're going to be in, then those possibilities are actually quite exciting.
Yeah, I think that's really, as I say, it's really positive. It's about kind of taking all of those different options, but really focusing on what needs to happen, which is actually not the technology. And Fiona, what are your thoughts around that kind of positive vibe of digital or online or technology enhanced learning?
The concept of disruption, you know, like many industries in the last 10, 20 years have had disruption, and actually e-learning industry itself, if you want to call it an industry, it's probably one of the last to be disrupted. You know, Netflix came about because, you know, we were all really fed up paying fines for our DVDs, and we didn't have the, you know, the flexibility of our kind of on-demand, you know, the way our lives are going. And similarly, e-learning needs to make that shift as well. We need to make the shift to supporting people of where they're at in the workplace. James has said right about linking to the performance objectives. You know, there's lots we can do with all of this really good tech and good content, but fundamentally this is about improving people's careers. It's about you know, making businesses work better, and we now have a range and a tool set both on the learning tech side and the e-learning content side to build this ecosystem of support for people. You know, so we're going to get to the stage where social learning, mobile learning, multi-device learning, AR, VR, I could go on at length about the buzzwords in our industry, are no longer buzzwords, but they are reality for people, and that's really exciting for me. So it's not just about e-learning content and doing that really well, it's about this infrastructure of support that people need to do on-demand learning, just-in-time learning, performance support, all of those really good innovations and disruptions that have been brought about in our industry.
I think you make some really great points about all the different technologies and therefore the buzzwords, and that can put some people off, understandably. If you're just joining us, thank you so much. We've had a couple of technical problems this morning, but we are here discussing about e-learning. So some good conversation and comments through here. Paul agrees with James. It's on about content comes first, focus on the learning outcomes, and basically what do people need to do, which is really good. And Leslie Price is saying the same, start with what you want to achieve and stuff. So we've got a lot of agreement there. I think a really interesting question will come to Jennifer, then Fiona, then James on this. Sally asks, we use digital a lot for the just-in-time learning nuggets. We struggle with making these into learning journeys. So Jennifer, what are your thoughts around that?
I think that's a really great question from Sally. I think that's something that quite a few of my clients perhaps struggle with, you know, the ease of Googling how to do something or looking something up on YouTube. I think I would argue that there's a slight difference between gaining knowledge and actually learning something. And I think that what Sally's suggesting is that there is a sort of step missing there, because depending on the learner's motivation, sometimes you need to nudge them to reflect and nudge them to actually have a go at trying something. So I think, yeah, it's fine, you can sort of look up how to do something, and that gets you past that first hurdle, but it's then how do you actually apply it in your day-to-day life? How do you, you know, so if it's pivot tables in Excel, for example, you can watch a video, learn how to do one, you can replicate that each month, but it's not until you actually go away and try playing around with it yourself and reflecting on it that you can learn and fully understand how you might use that in other situations.
That's a very good point, Jennifer. Thank you so much for picking up on what's in the chat window and focusing on that. And Fiona, your thoughts about a learning journey for digital.
I think one of the things that we've been doing with our clients is looking at key job roles that they need to support. And good practice do this well as you know, around the toolkit for the manager. So when you're talking about a learning journey, you have to think about, you know, the end goal. You want, say, for example, a competent manager. And yes, it is about, you know, really good content support, but there are other learning skills and learning interventions that we can employ. You know, we can introduce an element of social learning, but there's also online coaching and mentoring and so on. So I think when we think of our digital ecosystem, it's not just about plotting out the little nuggets of content, it's about how you embed good, for example, managerial practice in your organization and provide the right amount of support and not just little nuggets of learning content.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So there's a difference between learning and doing, I think, is what I'm picking up from you there, Fiona. Okay, thank you. And James, you've commented on this in the chat window early on, but what are your thoughts around this learning journey
also,
with the digital
Good practice, our bread and butter was performance support tools, so we've been talking about kind of just in time, in the moment. We've come up with all manner of marketing-esque ways of describing the kind of tools and resources that are meant to help you do something at the point of need. I think at one point we even used the term at your elbow mentor, which I'm very glad to say didn't last very long. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where, in terms of a learning journey, I think there's a bigger question to be asked in terms of, you know, if we're putting together some kind of suite of resources, whether they're kind of been designed as a program or people can create their own playlist of learning or what have you. I think that the bigger thing there is there's a cultural thing there, and is that do managers does the context, because Leslie mentioned context, which I think is massively important. Does the environment that your learners are in, does it allow them the chance and the opportunity to put what they're learning into practice? So I think, you know, the point I always make about e-learning, regardless of the tool, whether it's a formal e-learning 1 hour experience or it's taking part in a webinar or watching a video, e-learning or learning in general can only do so much. You know, it can really just give people the opportunity or provide them with the confidence to try something in the workplace. It can't do it for them. So I think, you know, there's I think what we have to bear in mind, whether it's a learning journey or a learning nugget, it's only one part of the puzzle, really. You know, the bigger thing is, as I said, giving people the confidence to try things in the workplace and making sure that that context of that environment allows for that, allows them to make mistakes and allows them to try things out, really.
Yeah, and Scott's asking, are we looking at different pedagogies now, James? So I don't know if you want to be put on the spot with that,
no,
or you can come back to that. Any thoughts, James?
You know,
including no, I don't want to answer.
One of our clients is an education program, and then one of the things we talk to them about quite a lot is pedagogical leadership. And you know, and providing the environment where you know their managers, their teachers, staff members, etc., can create the conditions where people can try things, and what's the best way of doing that. And sometimes it's mirroring the traits you want to see. Sometimes it's about just being interested enough to ask the questions. I think, Fiona, you mentioned coaching earlier on there, which is massively important. You know, creating a coaching culture or a coaching-esque culture is hugely important. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I've worked in organisations in the past where I've gone on formal learning experiences. I've gone away, like one example was a 2-day project management course, and I came back and I didn't run a project for about 3 years. And you know, perhaps that's when, if they'd had a culture of where the learning nuggets were available, so I could jump in, get a very quick summary of the project management methodologies that I looked at, a few checklists to help me work through what I had to do, maybe a few templates to complete, then that would have been very helpful. But the organisation I worked at that time held no truck with kind of performance support-esque job aids. So I think, you know, it goes back to the environment, it goes back to the context. You know, we have to anticipate what our learners going to need at various points of their learning journey, to go back to the original question, and think that through and actually make sure they're there when they actually need them. And that can be very complex in some circumstances, because, you know, there's a lot of environmental factors there, there's a lot of cultural factors there. But I think, you know, it's definitely something that's definitely worth striving for.
Yeah, and I like that, James. There's 3 years between learning something and doing it. I'm not sure that's just-in-time learning. That's just probably the opposite of that. So kind of taking this theme a little bit further, I'm going to ask Fiona a question from Amanda Bramford. She said, I'm interested in how we can use digital learning better in between taught classroom
Yeah,
modules.
I mean, it's a good question.
So what are you thinking about that,
the
Fiona?
old terminology of blended learning. And I suppose, I mean, this would probably be a really good way to think about of the learning journey. You know, and that one aspect of the learning is formal learning, which is our classroom. And probably all of us here in this webinar understand the concept of 70-20-10. So if a certain aspect of the learning journey is formal learning, and that covers a certain type of learning objective, what other things do we need people to learn? Well, we need people to practice skills. We need people to kind of communicate and collaborate with each other, because we know from research that peer learning is really good as well. But we also need to kind of take into consideration the science of learning, learning science. We forget things very easily. Just because we spend 2 days in the classroom doesn't mean to say that we're going to remember everything. So we need little learning nuggets outside it. We need to look at things like, communities of practice. All very well if everybody's in the one building, but, most of us are servicing global clients and global organizations. So how do we get people to communicate and keep in touch over their learning? So, if you're designing a program, it's not about saying, okay, I'm teaching this for 2 days in the classroom. It's about plotting out the complete journey and looking at where the classroom links in to all of the things that people need to learn. One thing our clients are doing is they're introducing the concept of stretch assignments. So they'll do a little bit of teaching in the classroom, but they'll either have a group or an individual project where you have to apply those skills, and they'll supply little nuggets of content in between the classroom, maybe assign a mentor, and maybe have some kind of social learning online community to try and complete those. So you need an end goal, you need an end purpose. It's not just about bringing people to the classroom just to tick the box of training. We need to make sure that we're following that journey.
Yeah, interesting to bring that back to the journeys point again. So I think that's a really good one about that whole education piece. And Leslie has, I think, started a conversation in the chat window a little while ago about kind of the language that we use, which is really important. We often, get stuck with very industry-specific language, which our business colleagues don't necessarily understand or know, not necessarily even interested in. And there's been a conversation about making sure we use plain language, and Leslie's just made the point, do our people in our organisation consider themselves learners? We do as L&D perhaps, but actually maybe we need to be thinking about them as workers or people. Who knows? You can tell us more in the chat window if you want to. Let's come to Jennifer with a question or a comment actually from Leslie a little bit earlier on. Leslie said, whilst content is important, to me, context.
I think that question ties in really nicely with what Fiona was saying about the idea of sort of flipping the classroom. So the content is almost kind of the easy part in a lot of, depending on the subject, I suppose, but content could be the easy part where people can access the content online and then come together in a classroom and talk about how they're going to put that into context. So an example of that would be, I do some work with Women's Enterprise Scotland around gender, and we work with business advisors and helping them understand the need for gender specific support for people setting up their own business. So we provide lots of research and stats and information online that they can have a read at, and then when we come together, that's an opportunity to actually talk about what that means in practice, because I think diversity can often be a bit of a tick box exercise in some organisations, and having that conversation either face to face or in an online forum after the sort of content part can be really helpful into how we're actually going to put this in practice in our organisation.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because every organisation will be different, every department, every individual will be different and have different needs. And then when we try and scale that up, that's where often e-learning can be seen as the answer. But by doing that, you just strip out all of that personalisation and focus. It's a real challenge. So, James, let's come to you with a question from Scott Connor. Scott says that I'm not so sure whether is there or there is, but either way, danger of employing too much technology without considering how your end user will interface. They need support and skills development too. Have you seen this, James, where just people are just throwing all sorts of tech
and I will hold
at
my hands
things
up
without
and say,
necessarily thinking about
shamefully,
the
that I
end
have been
user and how
guilty
they're
of
going
that
to
in the
use it?
past. There, things, new technologies come out, new ways of doing things. You get quite excited by them. There's something shiny happening over there. I'm going to use that. And actually, it turns out it's completely inappropriate for the what it is you're trying to achieve. And I think, Joe and I, we talked about Kathy Moore's action mapping during the little preview chat we had with this, and I know that Fiona, you're a fan of it as well. And I have to say, in terms of giving me a structure and a bit of discipline around the solution that I should be recommending, Kathy's action mapping is an incredibly useful tool because everything's all about the outcomes and about what the learner must do. So I'd like to think by using a technique like that I would recommend solutions which are appropriate or fit for purpose. But Julie Dirksen also, she's done a great book called Design for How People Learn, which I'm sure a lot of people in the chat today have probably heard of, if not read. And that's, again, has been a bit of a Bible for me, because some of the common sense advice in that, in terms of, one of the things she talks about is look at the environment in which your learning is going to be deployed to. What technology are they using? What's the demographic of your learners? All those questions that quite often people don't think to ask. But actually they're crucial. So if you do that kind of analysis up front, between the environmental questions and the business objectives or the performance objectives, hopefully you're going to be recommending stuff which or designing learning experiences which are fit for purpose.
And I think that's something across the board as an average stereotype in L&D. We're not always known for being very business focused, very action focused, to use Kathy Moore's language, and we do throw a little bit of learning stuff in and favourite stories and favourite activities. And then if we look at e-learning, obviously the favourite or the new shiny piece of technology. So it's a really good point there, James. Thank you. So Fiona, our next question for you from Amanda Bramford. This is kind of referencing a little bit more about some of the conversation we had earlier on. And she says, what do you think about moving more generic topics to the digital space, leaving time for richer learning in class? Now, Amanda doesn't say whether that's face-to-face or a virtual classroom, but either way, that question still stands. So Fiona.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. It goes back to the mix of technologies and content and support that you're going to provide for the staff. And just one thing that struck me about all of this conversation we're having is that we're all professionals here in terms of creating e-learning content and providing advice on learning technology. So this is stuff we live and breathe every day. But actually, the users we serve, they have very little time to jump into an LMS and access content and decide on what they need to do in a particular day to cover training. So we have to be cognizant of that time, and we have to be cognizant of what we would call the burden of training. People need immediate support. They need immediate answers. So when we start to think about moving generic topics that people can do on their own time, I think is that what Amanda is getting at, that these topics can be done at self-pace in their own time. We just need to make sure that our users, to take Leslie's point, it's our staff we're training. We're not training learners. We're training our staff to do their jobs better. We need to make sure that these people have have the adequate time and the adequate resources to take this training, and we're not just pulling a big lump of generic content to say, oh, that's not necessarily that important, do that in your own time. We need to just engineer it into their own workflow and their own jobs. So I think that's very important to consider. To James's point about the solutions and making sure they're fit for purpose, I think sometimes we're all in danger of shiny new object syndrome and over-engineering things. And one of the things that struck me, and Joe, you and I had talked about this earlier on, whenever we were at Learning Technologies in January, there were so many people walking around kind of wondering where to start in this whole digital learning ecosystem. Do I do content? Do I do tech? Do I do a mix? Do I do blend it? And so on. So we have to simplify that all down and make sure that fundamentally we're helping people develop really good careers in the area that they're chosen, and also that we're helping them to do their jobs better, and all of our decisions need to be based on that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
We've lost Joe.
I think we have.
you did lose me, but I'm back. There you go. I'm trying.
We all had a ripple of panic there. Oh my God, who's going to be the one to take over the presenting duties?
It's all right, James. I had already known.
I was trying to subtly do something in the background to make up for earlier on, but obviously that was not quite so subtle and didn't work at all. Apologies. I'm back here. So let's move into our last question before we go into a reflection piece. Paul Gray in the chat is saying this is a brilliant webinar blooper reel out of today. Yeah, I think the whole of the first 20 minutes is a blooper there. It just goes to show when you're on the cutting edge and doing the amazing work that we do at Training Journal.
it's not easy being a pioneer, Joe. There you are.
Yeah, that's what. So the last question we have, and Jennifer, this one is for you. It's from Debbie Braybrook, right at the beginning of the webinar. She made a comment and saying, I've been thinking about the idea of a digital underclass, and how do we reach those that shy away from digital learning platform? It isn't solely about digital skills, it's about changing community views and norms concerning digital learning opportunities. So what are your thoughts on that one, Jennifer?
I think, again, that's another great question. So I work with a lot of small business owners, for example, artists who are often quite terrified of the idea of technology, but yet the idea of them staying in their studio and accessing some learning, just from the comfort of their own home, they don't need to get dressed if they don't want to, that kind of idea really appeals to them. And so I think it's just about, breaking down barriers, and you'll have people within your own organisations as well that, you get some that are huge fans of technology and others that shy away from it. And I think it's just about breaking down those barriers and showing them that it's not actually that difficult. And, in actual fact, experiences like we've had today on this webinar, not running entirely smoothly, can actually help them feel a bit more at ease with just giving it a go, because the worst that can happen is that it doesn't work and you look as silly as we all have today. I think we've lost you again, haven't we?
Yeah. Oh dear.
This has been a bonding experience.
Yeah. It's been one where I think I need to go and lie down after this. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for that point. And there's been loads of really great conversation in the chat window about that too. And thank you, Debbie, for your comments there as well. We are going to come off of webcam. We're not finishing yet. We've got 8 minutes left. Our speakers are staying here, I promise. But we are going to come off webcam. So let's just wave a visual goodbye, because we're going to go into our reflection piece now. And so let's bring up our slide, and we're just going to practice with the text tool first of all. So have a look on your screen. What you should be able to do is use the text tool, which is the T tool there, to write on the screen, and just type a little hello and your name if that's working for you. If it's not working for you, do let me know, because everything else is just failed today, so why would that work? So do just write in there if you can. Nicola has worked. Scott, it's worked. Oh, Phew! Thank goodness for that. So just have a little practice. Once you've clicked on that T text tool, which is on the left of your screen, you can type a little hello, and then what you can do is click away, and it should be working for you. So thank you very much for doing that. So what we're going to do is we are going to just have a think about the conversation we've had today. And I know it was slightly shorter today because of the technical problems. And so again, apologies for that. But let's have a think about what it is that you're going to do from today. You've had some various conversation in the chat window with our speakers today, and also the higher level thing of, we've had problems, but we've overcome them today as well. So what are your action points from today's discussion? Just use that T-text tool on the left of your screen. And what you should be able to do then is just go and share just a few ideas about what you are going to do and how you are going to approach things in the future from our conversation today. It could be something you've learnt new. It could be something that you've re-experienced or just been reminded about. What are your thoughts? So we're just thinking about what our thoughts are of what we're taking away from today, what we're going to do. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the things that you are sharing with us. And we have here, right at the very top of the whiteboard, for us, it's how we brand our learners, or how the learners would choose to brand themselves. A really great point there, Nicola. Thank you so much. Underneath that, digital learning has a great potential, but fundamentally, it's about helping people do their jobs better or develop careers. Lovely point. Talk the bigger digital learning space more in my organisation. Great point. Really think about how to add context to some of the learning paths we're experimenting with. Love that too. Encourage people, in particular my students on a CIPD diploma in L&D programme, to give it a go. Thank you, Edwin. I'll have a look at Kathy Moore's action mapping. Oh, you will never go back. It's absolutely awesome. And her website, if you go and Google it, she's got loads of resources on there. And Nicola says the same, also going to check out action mapping. Well, if we've done nothing else today, then that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing those things with us as well. Debbie, thank you so much for coming along. We are just wrapping up now, so no problem at all. Let me put on the correct slides for today, and so I can say a massive thank you to Jennifer, James and Fiona, because we did have a few technical issues there and they dealt with it marvellously, as did all of you. Thank you so much for hanging on and for being so lovely, all of you. All of our sessions are available on the Training Journal website, and you can go and have a look at those. And all the recordings, including this one, in case you want to share that with anybody. You can join the conversation on TJwow, and John, our editor, has been gallantly doing that in the background. There's our Training Journal forum. If you want to kind of discuss anything in more than 140 characters, you can do that. And our next webinars you can go and register for, that will hopefully run as smoothly as every other one that we've done for a year and a half. All about the business skills that we need. It actually touches on some of the things that we've talked about here. And also something that we've talked about here about kind of digital learning landscape is, can you really facilitate something in a virtual classroom as opposed to just deliver and lecture? They're our next couple of webinars. So Fiona, James, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having us, yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Some great questions there. Thank you.
Brilliant. And again, thank you to everybody who came along. You can, if you want to kind of get involved with Training Journal a bit more, you can contact our editor. And if you want to get involved on a company kind of sponsorship element, we've got our business development manager too. Hopefully we will see you on the 12th of September and or the 19th of October, and have a great day, guys. Thank you so much.